Good morning. Certainly appreciate you being here. It's 9 o'clock and we will begin. I want to start out the meeting today with recognizing some very important things that commend some of what we're doing in the state of Tennessee. Just recently, an article in Education Next identified what they called the Tennessee Miracle, and it really identifies the standards that we have in place. We have gone from an F status in standards several years ago to an A evaluation in our standards. 2011 was this evaluation, and I think that is really significant. I would commend you to take a look at this article and go through and identify what they're talking about, and I think it really speaks volumes for some of the improvements that we've made in Tennessee over the last several years. We're, in this assessment, only second to Massachusetts in terms of the state standards. So I think this is important to recognize this, and you know, we go through lots of struggles with a lot of these issues, but it's important to recognize some of the recognition that we're receiving on a national basis for the kinds of things that we're doing. So a big kudo to everybody who's been involved in that, and I think basically all the players in education in the state have contributed to that, and I think that is extremely important. Also, before we get started, I'd like to recognize Chris Cannon. Chris has been an intern. Where is Chris? There he is. Okay. With us for the summer, done a fantastic job. He had dinner with us last night, and I think he ate enough food to last him for the next semester. So, Chris, we appreciate your work and want to wish you the very best as you return to school. On the consent agenda items here, we've got a number of changes we need to make. First of all, in the agenda that we had distributed, we want to move item 1C from the consent agenda to item 3K, put it at the end of final reading, and we need to have a roll call vote because that is a rule. We also want to remove item 3F from the agenda. This basically is the license thing, and we want to do some fine-tuning on a couple of the items that are in that, and we'll bring that back to the August meeting and the August 16th meeting. And we also want to remove item 3I from the agenda. We'll also be bringing that back to the August 19th meeting. And we also want to add one item to the consent agenda, which is item 1E, which is a resolution on support for the Common Core. With those changes, we've in the agenda, and we've got the minutes of the April 19th meeting, the minutes of the June 21st meeting, and the Tennessee school bus technical revisions, and the resolution that the board has received that strongly supports the Common Core initiatives and what is happening there. Those are the items in the consent agenda. Is there a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion second. Any questions about any of those consent items or any reason to pull any of them out? Okay, if not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you. We'll now move to the action items on first reading. First is the pre-K kindergarten enrollment rule, and Danielle.
Am I on now? Okay. The General Assembly changed the
enrollment date for kindergarten, and so we would like to have that also apply for non-public schools. Consulted with the department, and they also concur with this recommendation.
Okay. Any questions? Basically, we're extending what is required in public school to non-public school here, the ones that are actually approved by the state.
Correct.
Any questions for Danielle? Is there a motion to approve? So moved. Got a motion? Second. Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you. Next item is the state attendance guidelines. This is a rule on first reading. Danielle?
Yes, and we had a discussion on this yesterday at the workshop, but just to summarize, we are promulgating new rules on attendance, which is going to require LEAs to adopt attendance policies that are firm but fair, also include reporting and accounting procedures for attendance, and also including appeal procedures, and a policy that includes extenuating circumstances. So.
Okay. Any questions for Danielle? We had, I think, a fairly thorough review of this yesterday in the workshop. Is there a motion to approve? Got a motion? Got a second? Second. Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, textbook commission rule. Danielle, you're on a roll here.
This rule adjusts the bond requirements to allow for smaller publishing companies to be able to bid for textbooks, and it also streamlines the definition of textbooks also to include the possibility for e-textbooks as well.
Okay, questions for Danielle?
In this expansion in policy, are we asking them to give us a pricing, particularly a pricing differential between hard copy and digital?
I believe that that's already required in other rules, in the textbook rules.
How did we determine these amounts? They seem low, but
the textbook commission met and came forward with this recommendation.
Okay, and they're lower than they have been?
Yes.
They're okay. Any questions?
Just, did the commission explain why this is needed?
Basically, the reason that it is needed is for smaller publishing companies to be able to participate in the bidding process, because the bond amounts were so large that cut out some smaller publishing companies that were not able to bid because they don't have, obviously, the capital to put up the bond requirements.
Then I guess my question is, do they have the capacity to fill the needs then, if they're that small?
Well, if they want to bid for it, then they would have to demonstrate that they did have capacity.
Just to jump in here a little bit, I think the problem with the bond requirement is you've got a huge barrier to entry by having a large bond that's required, and yet it's not ultimately enough money to cover the costs if somebody goes totally belly up. And so our belief is that as we move into the Common Core and we have many more potential publishers, particularly for online resources, for electronic resources, it's important that districts have the opportunity to have just more things they can bid on, because right now we just have sort of 5 large publishing houses that completely dominate the market. And one of the things that's a challenge for that is, even with our own standards, effectively what a lot of these companies are doing is putting all of their energy into books for the biggest states and then sort of cutting and pasting together materials that wind up coming our way. And so I think the more players we can get, the better. But the bond requirement itself, I think, creates a barrier without actually providing the coverage that people would want. It's in some ways not the best indemnification process.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion, second? Got a second. Any discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you. Approved high school course of mathematics. David? Thank you, Danielle.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yesterday we talked a little bit about the idea that we have adopted the Common Core state standards, and K through 8 they are grade specific. When you get into high school, they are arranged by conceptual category. So you don't read the high school standards in Common Core mathematics, and you find specific standards in specific courses. So using the Park Model Content Frameworks, the third version that came out last November, the standards have now been placed into specific courses. Traditionally in Tennessee, we have had a traditional pathway that has the Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry courses, and there's also the integrated sequence of courses. And because the Common Core standards are arranged that way, we can continue to allow for districts to choose either pathway. And because the Park assessment will have assessment options for both pathways, I think it's now important to continue to have districts to have the choice. And I think it's important, especially at this time, before we go into full implementation in 14-15, because the textbook adoption cycle has been changed, the districts can see which standards are going to be in the pathways so that they can make the best choice for their resources going into 14-15.
Okay, and basically what we're doing here, we're adding the integrated math courses and the Tier 3 RTI.
Yes, sir.
To
the course code for the Tier 3 intervention course.
Yeah, right. Okay, questions?
I just have one question. I think you addressed it yesterday. I just want to confirm that the rigor is the same in both.
Yes, ma'am.
And that it is aligned to the Common Core, right?
Yes, ma'am. These standards are directly pulled from the Common Core state standards from the conceptual categories, but they're now placed into specific courses in those two pathway options.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Got a motion? Got a second? Second. Any questions or discussion?
Just a comment on the Tier 3. I have spoken with the folks this morning that have helped develop that and asked for a little more clarification on the paperwork when it comes to us next time, because they had embedded the math and the language arts piece together under the math section, just so we have a clear-cut paperwork on this. And
Okay, good point.
Input, yeah.
Yep. Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, David. We'll next move to the E item. Tammy, you have that. That's the English language. And here we're talking about RTI Tier 3 edition.
Yes, and so this is very similar to the math Tier 3 intervention course that just passed. It's just this one is for reading intervention, and so I'll briefly go back over that. And then remembering that this also pertains to the math course that you just passed as well. And so Tier 3 intervention is in addition to the 4 math and ELA requirements for students in high school, so it's in addition to their already core 4 courses. This course would be the most intensive intervention for students beyond their grade level standards that they would do in each of those classes. The classes are based on students' individual data, not the grade level standards. Instructions provided by a highly trained on the specific intervention certified teacher, and it is not to be 100% technology dependent. The instruction is expected to come from the certified teacher as well. The intervention should be systematic, research-based, and in the specific area of that student's need. There are guidelines and a rubric to help districts determine if the intervention is appropriate for the specific area of need of those students that would be in that course. For reading, the areas of deficit would fall under reading comprehension, basic reading skills, reading fluency, or written expression, depending on the student's specific need. There needs to be evidence that the intervention is more intense than the intervention they would receive at Tier 2. Also needs to be documentation and evidence that there's been progress monitoring, that the students' data and the program that the teacher is providing the intervention has been fidelity monitored as well, and that all decisions were based on data, and that all of that there is documentation on as well as they go through this. As described, or as the items that I just described, one of the pieces that we will add before second read is to add clarification for the high school courses within the component that discusses Tier 3, so that districts understand that these are not recommendations or suggestions, that they're requirements for these particular courses. So, any more questions?
Okay, questions? Any questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion, a second. Any other discussion, questions, comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Tammy, I believe you have this one, is the 2F textbooks.
Yes, and before you, you have the first preliminary list of the textbooks that were bid for social studies this year. So it's the entire list of books that were bid for approval. And the reviewers, which are the state teachers that review the textbooks, just finished the review process at that level this past Wednesday. And so the publishers will have the opportunity to correct, add, or delete any content within those books and present that to the Textbook Commission in September. And then the final recommendation of the final list after all of the reviews are looked at and the Textbook Commission reviews those will be brought back and presented in October.
Okay, and I think we need to make that clear that this is kind of a preliminary approval, gets the preliminary list of textbooks out there, and that we'll be bringing back the final recommendations from the Textbook Commission at the October 25th meeting. So just so everybody's clear on that. Okay, questions?
How do they go about doing this?
So the bid process starts, and so textbook companies can bid whichever books that they would like, K through 12th grade. And then we have a selection process to where we select actual teachers across the state of Tennessee. This year we have 27 teachers that are reviewers, and they span the entire state, so we have a good selection of teachers. And they sit on committees of 3. So for example, if it was a high school U.S. history textbook, there are 3 high school U.S. history teachers from across the state that will review any book that was bid for that U.S. history course. And they have a rubric that they go by. We also train them for a week in June on the rubric and on the content standards, and then they go back for the end of June and the month of July, and they review the actual books. Then they come back together, and we did that this week, Monday through Wednesday, and they bring the 3 members of each committee for each different grade level or content area, come back with the rubric and with a review, and they spend those 3 days, and they come to a consensus on their review and their recommendation for that book. Then those reviews are made public, and the textbook companies can respond to that. At the same time that this is going on with the educators across our state that are on a committee and looking at these books, there are 10 areas across the state to where all of those materials are open to the public, and there's also forms there that the public can look at that and review those books, fill out those forms, and send it back into the department as well. So it's a collection from sites across the state, and then also those very specific teachers as well.
When we're looking at, there's the 3 teachers and then there's the public, do we ask the state's teachers if they care to look at these, to do so themselves and offer their comments?
So you're asking if teachers outside of the ones that sit on the review committee, there's a public release that's there, so anybody could go to those sites as well, and we do communicate with districts that this is going on so districts can look. However, this is just for a preliminary list from the state, and so then when we come back in October and that's the final list, then there's an entire year process at the district level. So what I just described that happens at the state happens again within each district. So late fall, after the final list is approved, then the publishers will get samples to school districts. And then school districts will start that same process. They'll form committees across their district with teachers and their administrators, and they'll again review each one of those books to determine which book might work best in their community and for their school and their needs. So the entire process repeats itself during the next year at the district level before they make specific decisions about whether they want to adopt a book that was on the list or not.
Okay.
It is a pretty extensive process. I've happened in on some of the reviews that are taking place on occasions, and man, these people got books all over the place, and teachers plowing through them, and it's amazing to me what the resources that go into this sometimes. But it's certainly an extensive process. Okay, yes, Carolyn.
Can you describe how new standards then would apply to the textbooks that we'd be in the process of selecting?
So you're speaking specifically to the social studies that we're doing
Yes.
currently. So the publishers received the first draft of the standards, and then they received the second draft. So immediately when we finished that first draft, we sent it straight to the publishers. So they had started working on the content of the books off of the first draft, and then when we sent the second draft, we also sent a document that showed the changes very specifically for them from first draft to second draft. So then they continued through that process. And then they also had this time frame now. So we asked very specifically for the reviewers to list each standard that was not covered in the textbook. So over the next month between now and when they come back in September to present any changes, they would have had the opportunity to have fixed any of those areas.
Okay, other questions?
Just a request, actually, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for sharing the timeline. I think it was really helpful. If we could get that in writing, I mean, I know you probably have a timeline that you could share with us. It's just an issue that kind of comes up every year, and I just want to be able to continue to refresh myself on it if possible.
Yes, we'd be glad to.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion second? Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate it. Joey, English as a second language standard.
Good morning. You
Morning.
heard from Jan yesterday, but we're proposing to adopt the world-class instructional design and assessment standards. The WIDA standards are, they correspond to Common Core state standards. It allows the state to work more meaningfully to close the achievement gap for our English language learners. And the ESL task force approved these standards, so we ask that you adopt on first reading.
Okay, again, we had a pretty extensive review of this yesterday. Any questions for Joey? Yeah. Yep. That mean you want to make a motion to approve? Okay. Got a second? Okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Joey. Okay, we'll now move to the action items on final reading. The 3A item, approved high school courses. Scott.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. There have been no changes in this item since the last reading. Just a quick review. This item is intended to provide flexibility to students who are interested in STEM to be able to take physics and AP computer science to fulfill the mathematics requirement, that fourth-year requirement. It's important to note that we're not reclassifying these courses as math courses. There are still science and computer courses for the transcripts for going to college. They're just fulfilling that fourth-year math requirement, so students who have successfully completed 11th grade math and want to opt into a physics or a computer science to be more in line with a STEM major can do that to fulfill our requirement, because these courses have a high, heavy math concentration.
Okay, questions for Scott? Any questions?
Just one question. You know, the students that are eligible to participate, have met the college, ACT or SAT college benchmarks, correct?
The readiness benchmarks requirements, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve on final reading?
So,
Got a motion? Second. Okay, any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you,
Thank you,
Scott.
members of the board.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll now move to the Category 3 non-public school approval process rule. Danielle.
The existing rule on Category 3 schools only lists one regional accrediting agency, and we used to refer to the U.S. Department of Education's list, but they no longer publish a list, so we need our own. We're adding several regional accrediting agencies that we will approve under Category 3. This is not currently, we will not affect any existing schools under this category.
Okay, just adding some regional accrediting agencies. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay, questions for Danielle? Any questions? Mike?
I have one for Rich. You got any comments on this? Huh? Mostly, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk into the microphone. Once in 3 years.
So we have proved that Rich does have a voice. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see. We haven't done a motion, have we? Okay. Second. Okay. Any questions? Okay. This requires a roll call vote. So Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please.
Ms. Ayers? Aye. Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Perry? Aye. Mr. Roberts? Aye. Dr. Rogers? Aye. Mr. Rossley?
Aye.
Ms. Slyan? Aye. Dr. Wright?
Okay. Motion is approved. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Next item is the item 3C, a social studies standard. Jared?
Good morning.
Morning.
Social studies standards have been in need of revision for some time, and over the past several months, we've engaged in the process of increasing the rigor of those standards and providing what we believe will be a set of standards that will better prepare students to enter the world and enter the workforce. This was an extensive process, involved teachers from across the state of Tennessee, and I'm pleased to bring it to you for a vote today. I do want to call your attention quickly to the crosswalk that was provided with regards to questions relating to the geography standards yesterday and how inclusions within the revised standards meet concepts within the old or outgoing geography standards. Wanted to provide that to you. With that said, again, pleased to bring this to you for a vote this morning.
Okay. Questions for Jared? One thing I think we need to make clear here that we're talking about the total social studies curriculum that includes everything from kindergarten through history, through geography, through economics, through civics.
Correct.
So
Kindergarten through eighth grade.
It's a total package. We've had most of the discussion around the history, geography, but we need to recognize that we're looking at the total package here and for approval. Okay. Questions? Yeah, Janet?
I don't know if it's a question, just wanted to say, because we had great discussion yesterday, and I just felt like that I wanted to kind of bring some of that forward. I guess probably the first thing I want to say is I absolutely understand and support the fact that we needed to strengthen our social studies standards because they were woefully bad, and I am not a content expert, so if I think they're woefully bad, they must be pretty bad. So that being said, I think that the conversation was healthy and it needs to be brought forward, and that when you're bringing disciplines together, while in an ideal world it would be great for all disciplines to be in agreement and we don't have a lot of this discussion, but I think it makes it healthier and stronger to have that. So it gives me pause that we have those geography concerns still out there, but at the end of the day, it's certainly better than what we had. So I just wanted to publicly say that, while I support moving ahead with the standard, I just wanted to also get on record of saying that it concerns me when we're bringing two together. We're not just voting on a standard. We're kind of voting on blending two disciplines together.
Okay. Mike?
I feel like I've talked about this in nauseam, but one, I think that the department has done a great job of revising these standards. I think the department has done a great job in trying to strike a balance when there is a capacity issue. And when I say capacity, it is the amount of time within a school day and in a high school or in school by which courses can be offered. And the unfortunate thing that has given me a great deal of problems is that we have had to make a choice between, well, I guess my time's up.
For the record, Mike, I didn't do that.
I'm going to find out who did. Gee, I wish I didn't have dementia and wonder where I was. But we are, no doubt, in having, here's what we're looking at for anyone who's looking outside. We're looking at American history, world history, maybe ancient history. We're looking at we're looking at, well, maybe sociology. We're looking psychology, maybe. But we're looking at econ, government and civics, and geography. And I think that we have been able, and the department has been able to do a great job of managing how to make those work within the confines of what we have. The tragic part is that, and let me say one other thing. I think that what we're doing is pretty compatible with what we have been doing in regard to geography. I don't know, I could be wrong. But the problem is, today, geography needs to be a much more rigorous discipline in order for kids coming out of high school, whether they're going to go to work or go to college or whatever, to have a greater sense of the world they live in. And so many kids, whether they are urban, suburban, or rural, have a very myopic view of the world they live in, and it will be to their detriment, both as an employee and as a citizen. And so rather than in dealing with this whole notion of being able to get, or this endeavor of getting great standards, we've had to do something that has been less than what we should have done, or would have liked to have done, in order to make this thing work. And yet, as much as I have thought about this, I don't know what the department would have done differently. What I would ask is that an elective, not an AP course, be developed that moves away from the existing curriculum of geography and more into today's reality of geography, with emphasis in economics as well, so that kids have a really clear understanding of what they're going to see all around them and be able to put it in context. And that is something that I hope that the department will do in companionship with what we're doing if this is adopted.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Other comments, questions? Okay, I think it's, Mike, I think that you said it well. I think that we all recognize that there are probably a number of things that we would like to get into the curriculum that we're unable to get there because of the constraints that you're working with in terms of just reality of what you can require in a high school curriculum. And I think that the option we have on the table is in my opinion, certainly better than what we've been working with. It's an improvement, and I think it does everything we can given the resource constraints that we're working with. I think it is important that we do what we can to strengthen the world geography elective course that's out there, that we do what we can to promote the AP world geography or human geography course, and that also we work on the CETE course that will support the geospatial efforts that the opportunities, the job opportunities that are out there in that field. So I think we do need to carry through on those. Other comments, questions? Okay, is there a motion we approve on final reading? Got a motion? Second? Okay, any further discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Jared. Recognize that you've done a lot of work on this. We'll let you sleep tonight. Okay. Okay, next item is the Joy Special Education Program Service Rule.
This is an amendment to the rules regarding the definition of an IEP. Per our conversation at the conclusion of yesterday's workshop, Danielle provided an amendment. We will be eliminating short-term objectives and benchmarks to align Tennessee policy with federal law, but we will be keeping the statement of transition services for age 14 or younger. I reached out to our contacts with the advocacy community last night, shared the conversation from the workshop, and they were appreciative of our response to the public hearing. So, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so just to make clear, and I think Joy has said this, and we've all saw this yesterday in the workshop, that this is really an amendment or addition to the recommendation that was in the agenda, and it basically says that, Carolyn, you want to read this? We can.
Since I have on my glasses and you don't.
That's right.
Prior to ninth grade or age 14 or younger, if determined appropriate by the IEP team, all students will develop an initial 4-year plan of focused and purposeful high school study. The plan will be reviewed annually and amended as necessary and will connect the students' goals for high school, including the courses and/or training and/or skills necessary to meet their potential after high school. This required plan will include identifying possible transition service needs of the student under the applicable components of the student's IEP. This plan may be developed through a process in general education, but a copy must be in the student's IEP after approval by the IEP team.
Okay. Carolyn, you want to make a motion and we approve that?
I so move.
Okay. Is there a second? Got a second. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, this requires a roll call vote, so Phyllis, if you could call the roll.
Ms. Ayers? Aye. Mr. Edwards? Aye. Ms. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Roberts? Aye. Dr. Rogers? Aye. Mr. Ralston?
Aye.
Ms. Swain? Aye. Dr. Wright?
Okay, the motion is approved. Thank you, Joy. Appreciate it. Sarah, teacher and principal evaluation policy. Evaluators must be certified. Sounds like a good idea.
Good morning. Yes, we think that it's a good idea. And as you indicated, Chairman, this is an item that would make a revision to our current teacher and principal evaluation policy. And it would do just that. it would require certification for evaluators across any of the 4 currently approved models and any models that might be approved in the future. And as I mentioned at the last reading, this has been our practice, and it has been an expectation that any model that is approved by the board, that evaluators would go through training and certification. But we just want to take this step to ensure that it's part of the policy officially. And so it's pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Sarah? Need to have evaluators certified, and so any questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve? Okay, got a second? And any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. As we indicated earlier, we have removed item F. We'll be bringing that back for the August 16th meeting. We'll now move to item G, which is the BEP allocations. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, very excited this year. Usually we come to you this time of year with a perfunctory process to approve the allocations for the next school year. 3 things that are really exciting about this year's allocations. Number one, at the top there, you can see for the first time, the instructional positions are funded over $40,000. So last year was $39,849, so we finally made it over $40,447. A note about that, I'm expecting Mr. Edwards to help lead us in a vigorous conversation with the BEP committee this year around teacher salaries. So we're looking for that to be a interesting topic, new recommendations coming out of the committee that will begin meeting next month around teacher salaries. Also, the capital outlay component, which has been a major request each year from the committee, was restored for this year's budget. So you'll see that one listed at the bottom. So the systems will be receiving the restoration of the capital outlay component. Also want to make a note that we're very, very pleased that the governor's budget included the technology component, over $55 million, which was the chief recommendation, the overarching recommendation of the BEP committee meetings last year. And so that was put into the budget for school systems to gear up for the park testing. So without further questions, I submit for your approval.
Okay, questions for Scott? Okay, I think the observation that Scott made there is very important, that, in spite of some of the discussions we've had over the last couple of months about teacher salaries, there is a significant increase in the money that's going in that direction. We certainly hope that we'll be able to continue that, and we're most appreciative to the governor and to the legislature for providing those funds. I think they're needed, and we need to recognize that while we can't get to where we would love to be, we are making progress on that, and that ought to be recognized. Okay, questions? Any questions for Scott on the allocations that you have? Okay, is there a motion that we approve? So moved. Got a motion? Second? Okay, any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you, Scott. We'll move now to the BEP Review Committee appointments.
Yes, sir. Those will begin next month on August the 13th on Tuesday. All 4 will be on Tuesdays this year. Those will be posted on the State Board of Education website. They're open to the public to be able to view and watch. So we have attrition of, I believe it's 6 positions that need appointing. I'd like to read the names. So we want to recognize Representative Harry Brooks, who's the chair of the House Education Committee. Mr. Dorsey Hobson, who is the interim superintendent of the Unified Memphis City School District. Mr. Mitchell Johnson, who is the interim executive director of the Tennessee Education Association. Mr. Larry Martin, who is the interim commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Finance Administration. Mr. Wayne Miller, who's the executive director of TOS, the Tennessee Organization of School Superintendents. And Dr. Michael Price, who's the superintendent of Decatur County Schools. So these 6 individuals have been contacted and are enthusiastic upon your approval to join the BEP Review Committee discussions beginning next month.
Okay. Any questions for Scott? Is there a motion that we approve these appointments to the BEP Review Committee? Got a motion, second? Got a second? Any questions? I think it is important to recognize the important job that this committee does, and I think we got a really good group on this committee, and the work that they do is extremely important in determining how we're going to where our funding needs are in the state, and there is going to be a significant focus on teacher salaries and again where we need to be with teacher salaries as part of that BEP Review Committee.
And Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me to say so for transparency, revamp the website so all of the meetings are going to be videoed and available for archive streaming on the board's website, and the documents, the report from last year is also posted up, so anything you want to know about all things BEP can be found on the State Board of Education website under the BEP tab.
Okay, good. Any other questions, discussion on these appointments? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. I'm going to turn the gavel over to Gary here. I hope he doesn't need it for the next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The policy you have governing board activities requires that a chair serve a 4-year term and be elected by the board. Chairman Ralston's term will end July 31st of 2013, so it's time to re-elect a chair. It's also been your practice to elect a vice chair to serve the concurrent term as the chair. So with that said, I'll now open the floor for nominations for chair of the State Board of Education. Mr. Roberts?
I want to make the recommendation that Mr. Ralston continue to serve as chair, and I'll tell you my reasons for that. I've been on this board not a very long time, but a couple of years, and I appreciate the leadership that Ralston has given this board. I also appreciate the endless hours that he spends doing his homework and making sure that we as a board in our workshops are doing what we need to do, make sure that we're listening and paying attention to the details. And with that said, I'd like to make a motion that he serve as chairman.
Okay. Chairman Ralston's been nominated and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Not hearing one.
To echo what Lonnie said, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't really acknowledge both with Chairman Ross and Vice Chair Perry that, God, I'm glad they're willing to do it.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. I would like to add Carolyn Perry as vice chair for a concurrent term. And I know, Carolyn, I've told you this before, how grateful I am personally for your thoughtful, capable leadership and being a mentor to me and so many of the other members. And you always bring the best due diligence to every issue we debate here. And I'm just very grateful for your leadership, and it's my hope that you'll continue to serve.
I think we're going to vote on each one of them separately, so not hearing any other nominations for chair, could I get a motion that nominations cease and that we elect Chairman Ralston by acclamations? Motion's made and seconded. Phyllis, call a roll.
Ms. Ayers. Aye. Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Ms. Perry. Aye. Mr. Roberts.
Aye.
Dr. Rogers. Aye. Ms. Sloyan.
Aye.
Dr. Wright.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Now then,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
now we have a nomination on the floor for vice chair, and you've nominated
Carolyn.
Carolyn Perry. Motion seconded, nomination seconded. Any other nominations?
Call for the question.
So the question is, we vote on Ms. Perry. Phyllis, call a roll.
Ms. Ayers. Aye. Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Roberts.
Aye.
Dr. Rogers. Mr. Ralston.
Aye.
Ms. Sloyan.
Aye.
Dr. Wright.
Motion carries. Congratulations to both of you. I'll turn this gavel back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I've got about a 3-hour acceptance speech here, but we
Right. We sure do.
do appreciate the generous comments that were made. I appreciate the confidence. I'm excited about the things that are happening. I think we're doing a lot of good things, moving in the right direction. I think the article that I referred to from Education Next here earlier supports that, and I'm just very encouraged by the direction that we're headed and some of the things that are being accomplished. Also, I've been involved in this board for a long time, and I think that right now we have a more engaged board than we've had in my recollection of the past. And I certainly want to express my appreciation to the board members for their involvement, for their dedication, for their understanding of what is going on and what we need to do in K-12 education in Tennessee. So I certainly appreciate that. We certainly want to continue to hear from all players in the education community. As we've indicated earlier, we're not always going to be able to agree on everything, but we certainly want to be open to the input that we receive from everybody involved in education K-12, and want them to have the feeling that they're being heard. So, again, I appreciate the confidence in the vote, and look forward to the things that we're working on at the present time and feel like we need to accomplish. Okay, the next item on the agenda is one that we moved from the consent agenda, and it's really just a technical correction, basically, in cleaning up something that we failed to do on an earlier vote. And Gary, you want to just briefly explain that?
In 2008, when we approved the graduation requirements, we required that the end-of-course test count at that point 20% for 2 years and then 25% of the yearly average. Once we started getting into that, we met with high school principals and found that was just very, very difficult for them to do. So you changed it. We approved it in policy and in practice and in the implementation guides that were provided to schools to change that to 25% of the second semester grade. And that's easy for them to do, and that's been the practice for the last 3-4 years. So we found that somehow it did not get changed in the rules, so this is a technical correction to make rule and policy and practice parallel.
Okay, questions for Gary? Is there a motion that we approve?
So moved.
Got a motion? Second? Got a second? Any discussion or questions? Okay, this requires roll call, so Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please.
Ms. Ayers? Aye. Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Roberts? Aye. Dr. Rogers? Mr. Ralston?
Aye.
Ms. Sloan? Aye. Dr. Wright?
Okay, that is approved. We'll now move to the teacher license actions. Danielle.
All right, we'll have to take these out as a block for Gregory Alford and James Purdue. Those two are petitioning for restoration, and then the other ones you all can take together. So for the ones that we're taking together, you have before you the recommendations from the staff on licensing action, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, the two then we want to handle separately are Gregory Alford A item, and then James Purdue. In both cases, recommending denial of the restoration. Is there a motion that we deny restoration for those two? Got a motion, second? Got a second. Any discussions? Okay, Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please.
Ms. Ayers? Aye. Mr. Edwards? Aye. Ms. Perry? Aye. Mr. Roberts? Aye. Dr. Rogers? Aye. Mr. Ralston?
Aye.
Ms. Sloan? Aye. Dr. Wright?
Okay, now is there a motion that we approve the other recommendations that you have in front of you? Got a motion? Got a second? Any questions on any of the others? Okay, no questions. Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please.
Ms. Ayers. Aye. Mr. Edwards. Aye. Ms. Perry. Aye. Mr. Roberts. Aye. Dr. Rogers. Aye. Mr. Ralston.
Aye.
Ms. Sawyer. Aye. Dr. Wright.
Okay, that concludes the meeting. You know, one thing we might want to point out, I got an email here that's concerning that all these actions we take for teachers in this section are because of test scores. And, you know, somehow, if you get questions about that, you know, these are all rather egregious disciplinary type things that teachers have been involved in that we need to take action. And it doesn't have to do with how their children are performing on test scores. Commissioner, certainly want to commend you for all the work that you're doing and your staff is doing. I think we had an excellent meeting yesterday and went through a lot of stuff. We got a lot of good things going on, and we appreciate it. I don't know, do you have any? Since we gave Rich a chance to talk today,
Yeah. No, I appreciate all the work of the board and appreciate the opportunity to come back in August after having some additional conversations with TOS and others to make sure that what we're bringing forward on licensure is something that everyone is able to enthusiastically endorse.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. The next meetings, we do have a teleconference scheduled for August the 16th that we've been referring to. We'll have a meeting October the 25th, and we have identified the meeting dates for 2014. They are January the 31st, April the 18th, July the 25th, and October the 24th. Our anticipation is that we will have a workshop the Thursday before those Friday meetings, and I think we can fully anticipate that we'll probably have to schedule some teleconference in there for special needs, but those are the meeting dates for 2014. With no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr.